I still remember the day I saw her in a white dress. Not in my dreams, not in an old photo, not beside me. She was walking down the aisle toward my best friend, and I was standing there, smiling like a man who had already lost everything but was too proud to show it. Everyone thought I was happy for them. Everyone thought I was strong. Everyone thought I had moved on. But the truth was, every step she took toward him felt like a knife being pushed deeper into my chest. Her name was Emily. His name was Daniel. And my name is Ryan. For almost 10 years. Daniel was more than a friend to me. He was like a brother. We grew up on the same street, went to the same school, played basketball together, shared secrets, shared dreams, and even shared food. When one of us had no money, when my father left our family, Daniel was there. When my mother got sick, Daniel was there. When I failed my first college exam and wanted to quit, Daniel was there. He was the kind of friend people pray for. And Emily was the girl I thought God had sent to heal the broken parts of me. I met her when I was 22. At that time, I was working part-time in a small coffee shop near campus. I was not rich. I was not confident. I was just a young man trying to survive, study, and build a future. She came in one rainy afternoon. Her hair was wet from the rain. She was holding a few books against her chest. She looked tired, but there was something soft in her eyes. Something that made the noisy coffee shop suddenly feel quiet. She ordered hot tea. I remember because almost everyone ordered coffee there. When I gave her the cup, she smiled and said, "Thank you." Just 2 words. But somehow, those 2 words stayed with me for years. After that day, she came more often. Sometimes she studied alone by the window. Sometimes she read novels. Sometimes she just looked outside. Watching people run through the rain, I started looking forward to her visits. At first, we only talked about simple things. Weather, books, classes, music. Then slowly, the conversations became longer. She told me she wanted to become a children's book editor. I told her I wanted to build my own company one day. She laughed gently. Not because she didn't believe me, but because my dream sounded too big for someone who could barely pay rent. But she never made me feel small. That was why I fell for her. Not all at once. Slowly, like sunrise touching a dark room. By the time I realized I loved her, it was already too late to stop. For 2 years, Emily and I became close. We were not officially a couple, but everyone around us thought we were. We had dinner together, studied together, walked together, and shared pieces of our lives that we did not share with anyone else. She knew my fears. I knew her favorite songs. She knew how much I hated feeling weak. I knew she cried when she watched old family videos. And Daniel knew everything, because Daniel was my best friend. Every time I talked about Emily, his eyes lit up for me. He told me to confess my feelings. He told me not to wait forever. He told me a girl like that would not stay single for long. But I was afraid. I was afraid of losing what we already had. I was afraid, she would say. "Ryan, I only see you as a friend." So I waited, and waiting became my first mistake. One evening, after work, I finally decided to tell her. I bought a small silver necklace. Nothing expensive, but it had a tiny star on it, because she once told me she liked stars. She said stars were proof that even in darkness, some things still shine. I put the necklace in my pocket and went to meet her at the park. But when I arrived, she was not alone. Daniel was there. They were sitting on a bench, laughing. At first, I felt nothing strange. Daniel and Emily knew each other because of me. We had all hung out together many times. But then I noticed the way Daniel looked at her. It was the same way I looked at her. I froze. Something inside me went quiet. That night, I did not give her the necklace. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself Daniel would never do that to me. I told myself Emily would have told me if she liked someone. But life does not always warn you before it breaks your heart. A few weeks later, Daniel asked to meet me. He looked nervous. I knew something was wrong before he spoke. We sat in his car outside a convenience store. The engine was off. The air felt heavy. He said, "Ryan, there's something I need to tell you." I looked at him, and my heart started beating faster. He swallowed hard. Then he said, "I have feelings for Emily." I did not move. I did not speak. He continued, "I didn't plan it. It just happened." That sentence became one of the most painful sentences I had ever heard. It just happened. As if love were an accident. As if betrayal were weather. As if a storm could destroy your house and say, "I didn't plan it." I wanted to shout. I wanted to ask him how long. I wanted to ask him if he remembered every night I talked about her. I wanted to ask him if our friendship meant anything. But I just sat there. Because sometimes pain is so deep that anger cannot reach it. Finally, I asked one question. Does she feel the same? Daniel looked down, and that was the answer. A few days later, Emily called me. She wanted to explain. I met her at the same coffee shop where we first met. She sat across from me, holding her cup with both hands. She looked guilty. I hated that. I hated that she looked sorry. Because it meant everything was real. She told me she never wanted to hurt me. She told me Daniel made her feel safe. She told me she cared about me deeply. But not in the way I hoped. I listened quietly. Every word was polite. Every word was gentle. And every word destroyed me. At the end, she said, "Ryan, I hope you can understand." I wanted to say, I understand everything. I understand that I was never chosen. But I did not. I only nodded. Then I stood up and left. The silver necklace was still in my pocket. That night, I walked home in the rain. I did not open an umbrella. I wanted the rain to hide my face. For the next few months, I became a stranger to myself. I stopped answering Daniel's calls. I avoided Emily. I worked more hours. I studied harder. I slept less. People thought I was busy. But the truth was, I was trying to outrun my own heart. I told myself I hated them. But hate is not simple when the people who hurt you are also the people you once loved most. Daniel had been my brother. Emily had been my hope. And somehow, they had become the two names I could not say without feeling broken. About a year later, I received the invitation. Daniel and Emily were getting married. The envelope was white. My name was written neatly on the front. Inside, there was a photo of them smiling together. They looked happy, painfully happy. For 3 days, I kept the invitation on my desk. I told myself I would not go. Then I told myself I should go. Because staying away would only prove that I was still hurt. In the end, pride made the decision for me. I went. On the wedding day, I wore a dark blue suit. I arrived early. Because I did not want anyone to see me walking in late like a wounded man entering a battlefield. The church was beautiful. White flowers, soft music, warm light through the windows. Everyone was smiling. Daniel saw me first. He walked toward me, looking both happy and nervous. He hugged me. For a second, I remembered the boy who once shared his lunch with me in middle school. Then I remembered the man who married the woman I loved. He whispered, "Thank you for coming." I said, "Congratulations." That was all. Emily appeared later. She looked beautiful. Of course she did. Some people look beautiful even when they break your heart. When her eyes met mine, she paused for a moment. I saw something in her face. Regret. Maybe. Or sadness. Or maybe I only imagined it because I wanted to believe she had lost something too. Then the music started. Everyone stood. and she walked down the aisle, toward Daniel, away from me. That was the moment I understood something painful. Sometimes the person you love does not choose you, and no amount of kindness, loyalty, patience, or quiet suffering can change that. At the reception, I sat at a table near the back. People laughed, drank, danced, and took photos. I smiled when someone looked at me. I raised my glass when people made speeches. Daniel gave a speech too. He talked about friendship, love, and destiny. He thanked me in front of everyone. He said, I was one of the most important people in his life. People clapped. I felt sick, because sometimes public gratitude feels like a bandage placed over a wound that is still bleeding. Later that night, Emily came to my table. Daniel was talking to relatives across the room. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said softly, I'm glad you came. I wanted to say many things. I wanted to ask if she ever loved me. I wanted to ask if there had ever been a moment when she almost chose me. I wanted to ask why she let me stay so close if her heart was somewhere else. But I had learned that some questions do not heal you. They only make the wound speak louder. So I said, I hope you'll be happy. She looked down. Then she said, you deserve happiness too, Ryan. I smiled, but not because I believed her. I smiled because I had nothing left to give. After that night, I disappeared from their lives. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. I changed my number. I moved to another city. I accepted a low-paying job at a small technology company and rented a tiny room above a bakery. For the first time in years, no one knew my history. No one knew Emily. No one knew Daniel. No one looked at me with pity. And that helped. The first year was hard. Loneliness followed me like a shadow. There were nights when I almost called Daniel. There were mornings when I almost searched for Emily online. But I stopped myself every time. Because healing is not just about time. Healing is also about discipline. You must stop touching the wound and then wondering why it still hurts. So I built a new life. I woke up early. I worked late. I read business books. I saved money. I learned skills online. I failed many times. I started small projects that went nowhere. I lost money. I got rejected. I felt stupid. But slowly, something changed. The pain that once made me weak began to make me focused. I stopped asking, why didn't she choose me? And I started asking, what kind of man do I want to become? That question saved me. 5 years passed. My career grew. The small technology company became the place where I learned everything: sales, management, product design, negotiation, leadership. I was not the smartest person in the room, but I was always the most willing to learn. Eventually, I left and started my own company. At first, it was just me and one old laptop, then 2 employees, then 5, then 20. We built software for small businesses. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would make headlines, but it solved real problems, and customers paid for it. By the time I was 32, I had money, a good apartment, and a life that looked successful from the outside. But inside, there was still one room I never entered, the room where I kept Emily and Daniel. Then, one winter evening, I saw Daniel again. I was speaking at a business event in my hometown. After my talk, people came to shake my hand. Some asked for advice. Some asked for photos. Some gave me business cards. Then I saw him standing near the back. Daniel. He looked older, tired, not destroyed, but worn down by life. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he walked toward me. Ryan, he said. His voice carried years of distance. I nodded. Daniel. He smiled. But it was not the confident smile I remembered. We talked politely at first. Work, family, old memories. Then he told me he and Emily had a son. I felt something move inside me. But it was not jealousy anymore. It was something quieter. He also told me life had been difficult. His business had failed. Money had been tight. Marriage had not been as easy as they expected. I listened, not with satisfaction, not with revenge, just with the calm of a man who had survived his own storm. Then he said something I never expected. "I'm sorry, Ryan." The room around us seemed to fade. He continued, "I knew you loved her. I pretended I didn't know. But I knew. For years, I had imagined this moment. I thought if Daniel ever apologized, I would feel powerful. I thought I would finally say everything I had buried. But when the moment came, I only felt tired, because the apology was late, and late apologies are strange. They cannot change the past. They cannot return the nights you cried alone. They cannot give back the younger version of you who believed friendship was always safe. But they can do one thing. They can close a door. I looked at him and said, "I know." He lowered his head. Then he said, "I lost you because I wanted what you had." That sentence stayed with me, because the truth was, he had not only taken Emily, he had taken the friendship too. And maybe that was the part that hurt the most. A few minutes later, someone called my name, and the conversation ended. Daniel asked if we could meet again someday. I did not say yes. I did not say no. I only said, "Take care of yourself." And I meant it. A week later, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Emily. She said Daniel had told her we met. She hoped I was doing well. She said she had heard about my company and was proud of me. I read the message 3 times. Then I put the phone down. The old Ryan would have replied immediately. The old Ryan would have searched for hidden meaning in every word. The old Ryan would have wondered if she regretted everything. But I was not that man anymore. That night, I made tea, hot tea, the same drink she ordered the first day we met. I sat by the window and watched the city lights. For the first time, the memory did not hurt like before. It felt distant, like a song from another life. The next morning, I replied with only one sentence. "Thank you, Emily. I hope you and your family are well." And that was enough. Some people believe closure comes when the person who hurt you explains everything. But I do not believe that anymore. Closure comes when you stop needing their explanation to continue your life. Emily married my best friend. For years, I thought that was the end of my story. I thought I had lost love, friendship, trust, and a part of myself I would never get back. But I was wrong. It was not the end. It was the beginning of a different man. A man who learned that being rejected does not mean being worthless. A man who learned that silence can be stronger than revenge. A man who learned that some people are not meant to stay, even if they once felt like home. And most importantly, I learned this. Sometimes life breaks your heart, not to destroy you, but to remove you from a future that was never truly yours. I do not hate Daniel now. I do not love Emily now. I do not wait for an apology. I do not dream about what could have been, because the life I have today was built from the pieces they left behind. And maybe that is the quiet victory no one talks about. Not winning the girl, not punishing the friend, not proving everyone wrong, but standing in the place where you once fell apart and realizing you are still alive, still growing, still capable of love, still capable of peace. Years ago, I watched Emily walk down the aisle toward my best friend. I thought I was watching the worst moment of my life. But now, when I look back, I understand. I was not watching her leave me. I was watching life redirect me. And sometimes, the person who does not choose you becomes the reason you finally choose yourself.